I am really excited to be doing this mentoring networking program in STP because I feel like this has come in a really good time in my career. And I think that to me has been a noticeable shift as I think about my career, where for so long I was just focused on doing the job and, not getting fired and doing all the things to keep my job. And I still am very conscious of making sure that I am a good example of why tenure exists. I'm very conscious about folks who, and again, I'm trying not to throw shade, but I'm willing to bet all of us know somebody somewhere who got tenure and then basically stopped doing things or stopped doing things that they didn't want to do.
You've just heard Amy Hunter from Seton Hall University chatting with our Eric Landrum on the Psych Sessions podcast. Amy and Eric had the opportunity to have this conversation during STP's annual conference on teaching in fall 2022 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Psych Sessions would like to thank Lindsay Maslin, the conference director, and the executive committee at STP for donating a great space to record these conversations. Now, let's get you to Amy Hunter and Eric Landrum. The Psych Sessions podcast is sponsored by STP. That is the Society for the Teaching of Psychology. That's APA Division 2. You can find them at teachpsych.org. The views or product endorsements expressed do not represent the views, support, or endorsements of STP. Psych Sessions is so grateful to have STP as a long-term supporter.
Welcome to another episode of Psych Sessions. We are here at ACT. I have a very special guest, Amy Hunter from Seton Hall University. Hi, Amy.
Hi, Eric.
Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate your time today.
Well, thank you. It's a delight to be here.
Well, that's a very nice lie to start off with. I really appreciate that. I'm just teasing her. I want to say thank you to ACT and the Society for Teaching Psychology and Lindsay Maslin for the room that we're in. We always appreciate when a conference will give us some of the space to record that. So I have 42 different topics to talk to you about, and they're going to go in random scattered order. But for our listeners, Amy, would you tell them a little bit about what you do and what you teach at Seton Hall?
Absolutely. So I have been at Seton Hall for almost 20 years. My area of specialization is behavioral neuroscience. So my absolute favorite class to teach is biological psychology. I also get to teach courses like research methods. I get to teach biological psychology laboratory. I created an orientation to the major course, which is also a lot of fun to teach. I've taught graduate courses in psychopharmacology, and over the years I've taught a lot of other courses in the schedule as needed by the department, as so many of us have. Okay, and somewhere along those nearly 20 years, have you served as department chair? For a minute or two, yes. I was chair for 7 years, including in spring of 2020.
In the spring of 2020. Yeah. We should chat about that. I want to come back and talk about the orientation of the psychology major course. We can come back and talk about psychopharmacology, but you're also active in Division 2 as well.
I am. So I did a few years as the director of Project Syllabus, and now I am the director of the Professional Development Mentoring Network in STP.
Could they make that title any longer?
I don't know. They could try, but okay. I bet they'd fail.
You think that's the longest title of them all?
Longest and a little awkward. A little bit. It does not exactly roll off the tongue in the way that Project Syllabus does.
So can you say that title again?
Maybe. Professional Development Mentoring Network.
And what is that?
Most of my job so far has been coordinating mentoring relationships, facilitating mentoring relationships between folks who self-identify as early career psychologists and folks who have been in the field for a little longer than that.
Okay. All right. Very good. And Project Syllabus, how long did you do that for?
I believe it was about 6 years.
And those are still peer reviewed?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things that I tried to do when I was director is to increase the number of reviewers so that we have more reviewers. And we also have a good number of syllabi. I handed that off to Eleni Pinau about a year ago, and she's also doing a bang-up job with it.
So 2 fun facts about Project Syllabus. Project Syllabus was once run by Sue France. So maybe
this does not surprise me.
Don't know that. And secondly, 2 syllabi that I once submitted to Project Syllabus were rejected.
I'm very sorry.
So I know.
I hope that was not under my directorship.
It was not.
Excellent.
So I don't have any syllabi in Project Syllabus, which is a little bit embarrassing to admit as a former STP president. So you'd think I would be able to get past peer review, but
I would
apparently
encourage you to try again.
No,
we'd be delighted to have your work there, Eric.
No. Once rejected, always rejected. That's my motto.
Okay.
All right. And so, have you been at Seton Hall your entire career?
No,
Post-PhD.
it's my second tenure track job.
Oh, I'm going to sit up. May I inquire about your first?
Absolutely. So after I finished my postdoc, I was looking for a job, and I will date myself. That was in about 2003. It was 2003. Yeah. And I did a job search. And as folks who might have been job searching around that time remember, jobs were very hard to come by. And I was living in Philadelphia. I had met this great dude who turned out to be my husband. He wasn't really interested in leaving Philadelphia. He was born and raised there. If you know anyone from Philly, you know how that goes. But I said, "You seem really cool, but I need a job." And so I applied for teaching positions that seemed like a good fit. And I got hired at the time, Indiana University, Purdue University, Fort Wayne, which is now just Purdue Fort Wayne. So it was a merger of IU and Purdue. Okay. So I was in the northeast corner of Indiana. I was there for 3 years. I had some absolutely amazing colleagues there. And it was really, really fantastic to be hanging out with a group of people who are super passionate about research, but also about teaching. I learned a lot about teaching from some of my colleagues there.
So where he lived in Pennsylvania was close enough to in that place in Indiana?
Oh, no. We did a long distance thing for 3 years. I got to know both the Philadelphia airport and the Fort Wayne airport quite well over 3 years. We both did. So we did a long distance thing for 3 years.
Okay.
And then we decided that wasn't a good fit for us.
It's hard.
It's very hard. 9/11 happened in the middle of that. So flying then became much, much more challenging and more expensive. And I decided that that wasn't a great fit. And I was fortunate that the year that I was looking for a job, Seton Hall had an opening. And New Jersey was good enough. It's enough. He left Philadelphia for New Jersey, which is still a bit of a sore spot, but that's okay.
So even 19 years later, it's a sore spot.
I shouldn't say. He's a very good sport. Had it been up to him, we'd live in Philadelphia. But that's okay.
Is he still an Eagles fan to this day?
Oh, heck yeah. Go Birds. Go Phils.
Oh, my gosh. So I interviewed someone yesterday who said "Go Birds" and EAGLES a couple of times on the podcast.
Yep, go Eagles.
Yeah, okay. All right. So maybe I'm doing reverse chronology, which I hope you're okay with. So IU Fort Wayne.
It was IPFW at the time that I was there.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes.
But then, where was the postdoc? So you didn't meet him until you were. When did you meet your future husband?
Let me do the chronology in chronological order, because that will be a lot better for my brain than doing it backwards.
I hate movies with flashbacks. I got to tell you, and you weren't flashing back. I was going in reverse order. So thank you. Yeah.
So I went to grad school at University of Vermont.
Can we go one more back? Where'd you go to undergrad?
I went to undergrad at Salve Regina Now University, which is a tiny little Catholic college in Newport, Rhode Island, that most people west of Connecticut have never heard of.
So wait a second. Is there a Catholicism through thread?
We've all seen the research. Retrieval practice increases student performance. But that doesn't mean that taking quizzes is popular among students. At W.W. Norton, they think assessment can be fun. So if you and your students are tired of those same old multiple choice questions, mix it up with Inquisitive, W.W. Norton's award-winning adaptive assessment. Created by a cognitive psychologist, Inquisitive utilizes gaming principles and interactive question types to engage students with more active than static multiple choice questions. Students wager points on each question, utilizing strategies of prediction for metacognitive monitoring. With the ability to control their grade by how many questions they answer, almost all students continue working until they have earned a grade they're satisfied with, thus rewarding effort and fostering a growth mindset. Want to see what your students think of Inquisitive? For Psych Sessions listeners new to Inquisitive, you can try it for free the next time you teach. Just go to siegel.wwnorton.com/psych sessions. That's Siegel, like the bird, SEAGULL.wwnorton.com/psych sessions. And the folks at WW Norton will even integrate it into your LMS for you.
Inadvertently.
Okay. And so a tiny little small private liberal arts school.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Right.
And did you major in psychology?
I did. I double majored in psychology and biology.
Behavioral neuroscientist.
There you go. But I also should say I got a BA in biology, so I didn't have to take those super hard classes. Like I managed to not take calc. I did not take physics. Like all those. I didn't take orgo. Yeah.
Wait, but the super small school had a BA and a BS in biology.
They did. I believe the BA was there for particularly for students who were education majors who needed a second content major, which I don't know if that is true everywhere, but I know for at least some schools that students who are education majors need to have a double major in a content area.
When you declared majors at your undergrad, which one did you declare first?
Psychology. That was always where my passion was. Okay. When I was a senior in high school, I had the opportunity to take a one-semester class in biological psychology, which at the time was unheard of. Yeah. And I loved it. From the minute I took that class, I absolutely loved it.
And where was that?
That was in Waterbury, Connecticut.
So Connecticut. Okay. All right. So undergrad in Connecticut.
High school in Connecticut. Undergrad, Rhode Island.
Rhode Island.
Grad school in Vermont.
Grad school.
I'm a New England girl. Then I did a postdoc at Penn in Philly.
At Penn in Philly.
Yes. Hence the Philadelphia connection. And I was there for 3 years.
3 years. Penn and Philly for 3 years. Yep. Then Indiana.
Exactly. Then
Seton Hall.
Right.
New Jersey. Mm-hmm. South Orange, New Jersey.
Indeed. Nice.
Are you of the trio? I know there's a lot of great faculty members in your department.
Yes.
I know a trio of three who I believe is fantastic. You're one of those three. It's also Marianne Lloyd and Susan Nolan. Yes. Are you the first of the three there?
No, Susan was first.
Okay.
And then me, and then Marianne.
So Marianne's the slacker who got there last.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Very good. Very good. Okay. So where was I going with that? Amy, where was I going with that?
I don't know. I'm sorry. I can't help you. That doesn't mean I can read your mind.
Well, you've got the probes on my head and they're coming out. Did you do that kind of work? Did you do you put the cap on and you put the electrode paste on?
So actually I was trained in an animal lab. So yes, but not in humans.
Okay.
And actually the work I focus on is actually sleep research. So I actually have done EEG recordings in rats.
You know, I did work with rats.
Really?
With caffeine.
I did not know that.
Yeah, back in the day. Actually, my first publications are caffeine and wheel running.
We used to do a biological psychology laboratory unit where we gave rats caffeine, measured motor behavior.
So in my undergraduate experience, and I wish I could give this to my undergrads now, we had my physiological psychology course. We trained rats in a Skinner box, in a real Skinner box. Mm-hmm. We did surgeries. We did a vagotomy. We did intracranial self-stimulation. Nice. And we had to go every day and feed our rat and care for it, make sure the sutures didn't come open. I mean, it was a big deal for 15 weeks. As an undergrad, as a 20-year-old, I was doing this in a physiological psych course.
Yep.
It was amazing.
Yep.
But you don't do that at Seton Hall.
I had been up until the pandemic. We did have a rat lab. We had students, we had a learning laboratory class and a biological psychology lab class. And so students were working with rats in both of those classes.
Okay. And did you do any histology at all?
I did at the very beginning, but that is so time consuming that I realized it wasn't practical, especially pre-tenure was when I was doing that. Yeah. And it was took so much time, and it was so impractical for me to do that when I really need to be focusing on my own research to get tenure. And that pre-tenure balance is very challenging. And so my time really needed to be on working on things for publication. Instead of spending hours and hours and hours doing in the lab.
Space and it's costly.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And we, at the time, had a small master's program. And so sometimes I had grad students who could be helpful in that way, but often I was training them how to do it. And I absolutely love doing that, but it takes a lot longer to train someone to do it than to do it. But the training was essential. So it just became something that it just was not time. I felt like it was not time efficient, considering that it seemed that a very few number of students were really appreciating it. And many of them were just checking a box and checking a requirement to get out of the class. And I just couldn't justify the time that I was putting into it after a while.
Absolutely. I was working with Sprague Dolly rats. Mm-hmm. Yep. Is that what you were working with? Yeah.
Yep.
Intraperitoneal injections of caffeine.
Yep.
I'm sorry, this is supposed to be about you, right? I'm just having a fond memory.
I'm glad I'm triggering that. I'm glad I'm giving you that experience, Eric.
I was in a white lab coat. How stereotypical. Given injections one day in the lab, and I wasn't paying close enough attention. And I went, you know where this is going, Amy, don't you? I can tell by the laughter on your face. It's okay to laugh on the podcast. It's a good thing.
I'm trying not to laugh too loudly into the mic because that's obnoxious.
No, that's okay. And so I've got them in what I'm taught as the Carlson grip, right? Gently holding the rat like this. And I'm sorry, the podcast listener can't see what I'm doing. And I was supposed to go in the intraperitoneal injection. I go too low with the needle. Little rat doesn't like that, chomps down where they can chomp, and I still have a scar 40 years later.
A memento.
A memento of the occasion, thank you. And what people don't realize is that rats have curved teeth. And so I very reactively opened my hand to let the rat go, and the rat is hanging with its curved teeth. I'm bleeding, dripping blood on the floor,
and your white lab coat probably.
And so I start shaking my hand back and forth, and the rat is back and forth.
The rat is very unhappy right now.
Right, and so is my finger.
Yes,
and then eventually I think about, I got to go up and down so the rat teeth can unhook.
Oh my!
And then the rat scampers away, and then I get a Band-Aid, and I get the rat and put it back in its cage. And I worked with rats and published a few things with rats. Yeah. Thank you for letting me go down memory lane.
Anytime.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Eventually, this podcast will be about you.
Quite all right.
It really will be. So you currently teach psychopharmacology?
We no longer have the master's program, but when we had the master's program, which was up until a year or two ago, I taught the graduate psychopharmacology class every other year.
So how does a department end a master's program?
We'll be right back.
With this powerful course platform, Achieve, Macmillan Learning makes it easier than ever to integrate Macmillan Learning's acclaimed digital content into your course. Interactive ebooks, learning curve adaptive quizzing, additional assessments, immersive learning activities, an extraordinary video collection, and much more. And Macmillan is always here to help you confront today's toughest teaching challenges. For example, are you tired of students putting more work into cheating than studying? Our recently published Educator's Guide to Academic Integrity is full of ideas for using Achieve to take cheating off the table. The guide is available for free at macmillanlearning.com/psych sessions. Achieve for Psychology, engaging every student, supporting every instructor, setting the new standard for teaching and learning.
Slowly, thoughtfully, sadly, it was under-resourced.
That's not surprising.
And as I think is often the case, the administration had different ideas than we did about what appropriate enrollment numbers would look like. We wanted a very small hands-on program. Students do a thesis. They wanted more students. But we couldn't handle more students without more faculty and more money and all of the things. And then during COVID, things just sort of came to a head. And we had been discussing in the department ways to overhaul the program, also to make it more useful and more relevant for current students, because the way we had designed it almost 20 years prior, I shouldn't say we, I was not there then, it was right before I got there, but the way it was designed was a very traditional experimental psychology program. And I know that we did a great job training our students, but student needs and interests and what they do after grad school have changed a lot in 20 years. And so the program we designed was giving them some great skills, but we really wanted to change it to be more relevant to students who were not necessarily going to a PhD program. We developed a program that I do think was very strong for helping students when they got to PhD programs, but that was really our focus. But that's not what most of them are doing. Most of them are going into the workforce. They might do a PhD, but we had started to have discussions about ways to change the program and really completely revise it so it was more appropriate for other students who didn't necessarily want to go to PhD programs. COVID happened, budget problems, and we basically said, this isn't going to get any better. We didn't really have any time anymore to make the changes we wanted to make. We wanted to be thoughtful and deliberate and really think about what would best serve our students. And that would take us a while with the other one or two other things that were happening during COVID.
Right.
And we just didn't have the time to make those changes on the timeline that the university really wanted. And it was a very sad decision, but we all realized, it was unanimous. We all realized that it wasn't tenable in its current state. And given how overwhelmed everybody was, we also were not in a position to quickly turn around a whole program revision.
Well, I think the undersourcing is sadly a very common theme throughout programs in the U.S. When departments get approached to start something new, whether it's a new minor or a new certificate program or add a master's degree program to their existing undergraduate program, it's often on the backs of the undergraduate degree. And graduate students aren't thought about with respect to full scholarships. New faculty aren't thought about with respect to new faculty lines plus lab space plus the stipends they need to be there in the summer for graduate students. I mean, undersourced is really the key word, I think, there.
Yeah. We also had one of our departmental colleagues who was instrumental in developing that program, just retired. And that was also a huge hit, just as a resource issue. We're hiring to replace him. We can't replace him. But we're hiring for someone in behavioral neuroscience. There's a plug. Seton Hall Psychology is hiring. If you're in behavioral neuroscience, talk to me. But it was just very difficult then to also maintain that level of support for students when we're down one person, when we're down a behavioral neuroscientist in particular.
Yeah, about every 5 years at Boise State, someone comes along, typically it's a new dean, that says, we'd like you to start a graduate program in the psychology department. And we've actually had data shown to us in the past. In the graduate admission, psychology is the single most requested department that doesn't have a graduate program where it's requested we did have one. And every time we've taken a flyer and started to design it, there's not enough resources to do it well,
right,
and sustain it. There's occasionally a tidbit of interest, and it would be great to work with high-quality graduate students who are well-supported, but we can't figure out who's going to backfill what we stopped doing for the undergraduate program to serve these new graduate students. So it sounds like that was part of the challenge that you all faced.
Absolutely. And it was also really important to us to maintain a high-quality undergraduate program. As you said, that is the bulk of our job, is teaching undergraduates. And that was always a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. 7 years. You're out on probation and parole.
I am.
So I'm currently in my third iteration as department chair.
Congratulations.
Oh, you combined them. That's like one of these terms like voluntold.
Exactly.
I usually say congratulations and condolences. What were your challenges as department? Is it a rotation where everyone has to do it for 7 years?
No. So we have 3-year terms. And it's really important.
3 doesn't go into 7 evenly.
I know. I'll get to that part.
Okay. Sorry.
So we don't have rules in that. The faculty guide says 3-year terms.
Schools, no rules.
There's rules. So as a department, our approach in general is that we think a rotating chair model is a good thing for us to have. Personally, I think it's really important that there are leadership opportunities for people in the departments.
Yes.
So I don't want to throw shade on anyone who's a long-standing department chair, but from my perspective, I really like the idea of having those opportunities for new people in the department to know that that is a possibility for them at some point. So I think that's really important. I think it's important for the department to have different people in those leadership roles and have different perspectives and different people in charge. They bring different things to the position, and I think that's healthy for a department as well.
Yep.
So Susan Nolan was the chair before me. So I had a fantastic role model of how to be a chair. She did 2 3-year terms, and at the end of her first 3-year term, we had a department conversation, and she basically said, I'll do this again if you would like me to, but if someone else would like to do it, I'm also happy to step out of the way. And I think I was the next logical choice to be chair. And at that point, I kind of said, no, not ready. Please, not me, not it. And so Susan graciously agreed to do it for 3 more years. And then I ran and was elected. So I did it for 3 years.
Was there a real election?
I believe that I ran unopposed.
Okay, sorry.
So there was an election. There was a Qualtrics election. The Nominations and Elections Committee did it. So it was real in that sense. It was me and a write-in option. As far as I know, no one was written in.
Okay.
So,
sorry.
Yes, quite a right. So same thing happened for my second 3-year terms. I kind of said the same thing to the department, and people said, no, please, you keep doing it. Okay. But the person who would follow me, Kelly Geddert, also amazing, she was on sabbatical during my 6th year as chair. And she said, could I please not come back from sabbatical and magically be chair? She really wanted 1 more year, which I completely understand. So I said, sure. I mean, and again, this is a department-wide conversation. It's one of the advantages of having a very functional department is this was a department-wide conversation. And I said, sure, I'll run for 1 more term, as long as we all understand. At the end of that first year, I am going to step down and there's going to be an election. And that's how we transitioned. So hence the 7th year. And then we transitioned to Kelly. So I won the pandemic, and then Kelly is in her 2nd year as chair.
So I'm about to demonstrate why, and this shouldn't be a shock to anybody, how you're nicer than I am, which is not a shock at all. So we have 3-year terms, and I'm finishing my 4th year. The next chair is my colleague and friend, Cynthia Campbell. And she's on a 1-year sabbatical right now. And she will come back from sabbatical and become chair. She's not going to get a year.
That isn't very nice of you, Eric.
She agreed to it because the alternative would have been I complete my year 3 and step away, and she couldn't have taken a sabbatical.
Right.
But the other thing I wanted to ask about is, and if you don't have to go into the weeds if you don't want to. Is there, I'm assuming that most faculty are on 9-month contracts.
Yes.
Is the chair on a 10, 11, 12-month contract, or is there an extra stipend? Is there any reason to think that there could be at some point competition for the chair position because of any financial incentive?
I get anything's possible.
Okay.
However, having said that, it's not a big stipend. I don't remember what it is. It's not impressive. Okay. There is a teaching reduction. So normally we all teach a 3-3. Folks in tenure track positions teach a 3-3. We have 2 colleagues who are on lecturer lines who teach a 4-4 and don't have research expectations. So as a regular faculty member, I teach a 3-3. As chair, I taught 3 courses over the course of the year. So it's a pretty substantial reduction in teaching. But
that's a lot to teach while you're chair, though.
It is. And Susan Nolan said this to me before I became chair, and she was right. The release of time is appropriate for the job. The first year, it doesn't feel that way because the first year is such a steep learning curve. Mm-hmm. So that didn't quite feel right. But after a few years, and I kind of had a rhythm to it, and it was fine. I also, again, being part of a highly functional department, there are a lot of benefits. And one of those is that the first year or so, I could really be thoughtful about my teaching schedule and choose to teach classes that would be a good fit and would give me some flexibility. And I said, I love teaching biological psychology. I have taught it, I think, every semester since I've been there, except when I'm on sabbatical. But that does not take a lot of prep on my time. Okay. So that is a lot easier than something that if I were volunteering to do a new prep, for example. Right. So people are very good at understanding how the whole pieces of the schedule work together, and we're good at giving people a little bit of room when we are able to do so. So that made it okay in terms of teaching. And I was able to balance my teaching schedule. So I had 2 courses in the fall and 1 in the spring, because personally, I've always found the spring to be a lot busier than the fall. And I was generally able to do that. So that was a big help.
Okay. Yeah. In my chair role, the chair in my department goes from a 9-month contract as typical faculty to a 12-month contract. Yeah. Because let's face it, no matter what, it's a 12-month job.
Absolutely.
And so that's a 33% increase in pay, which is substantial.
We go to a 12-month contract, but we just get a small stipend.
Yeah, which is not commensurate with the amount of work that you're doing.
I'm not going to figure out what it was hourly.
Yeah,
I'm not interested. I'm not interested in knowing those numbers.
No, not unless you want to be instantly depressed.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
But
so theoretically, there could be competition in a department election. Yeah. Certainly, other departments on our campus do. People, are running against each other, and so. Could that happen? Absolutely. But I think it would happen because 2 people have different visions for where the department should go, not because of a resource or stipend or a financial issue.
Yeah, I actually taught 2 classes last fall, and apparently I was cranky. And I knew I was cranky, but apparently I was cranky to others, which I didn't actually process. And I really regret, because at the end of a year ago, December, I was meeting with my associate chair and our business operations supervisor. We were just having a little end of the semester, just a nice little celebration. And one of them said to me, something to the effect of, he took on the 2nd course for the department and we have all paid the price.
Ouch.
And she meant it in just a matter-of-fact way, and she doesn't normally tease, and she wasn't teasing, and she was matter-of-fact, and it was like, oh my gosh, I get it, And she wasn't trying to hurt my feelings at all. She's just not built that way. Right. And it's like, okay. And so that was such a traumatic experience for them that this semester, this fall, I'm not teaching anything as department chair, which has felt odd. And,
I'll bet.
And I got to tell you, guilty, because everybody started the fall asking each other, what are you teaching? What are you teaching? What are you teaching? And they all knew, they can all see the schedule. Right. I'm not on the schedule, but it's like, I'm not teaching anything. No, I'm a real role model.
I enjoyed the opportunity to teach while I was chair because I felt like it was a really important for me to still have that contact with students.
Of course it was. I've been banned.
I know. So you've lost those privileges?
But I am going to be able to teach general psych in the spring.
Excellent.
Which I haven't taught since fall 2009.
Wow.
And I've been wanting to. And even in my own department, when I was chair, I couldn't put myself on the schedule because I was teaching other things that I was needed to teach. Which reminds me to ask you about Introduction to the Psychology major.
Yes.
Where'd you get that idea?
From my colleagues at what is now Purdue Fort Wayne. They started that class after, I think it was after I left. And during my first sabbatical, part of that, one of my projects was to develop that course for our department at Seton Hall. I went back to Fort Wayne. I hung out with a friend of mine, and she helped me enormously in terms of thinking about the class and developing it in assignments. And then I changed a few things to be more applicable to Seton Hall students.
Of course.
And, over time, over a few iterations, of course, made some more tweaks. For quite a few years, I was the only one to teach that class in our department. So it was interesting and fun that I could teach this class to mostly first-year students, but then biological psychology is an upper-level class that's mostly seniors. So I got to see them at the very beginning, and then I got to see them near the end, and it was nice to see them a few years later.
Absolutely.
That was a fun thing to be, a fun experience to have. So it is, I don't know if it's that different from most other places that have a similar class. Half of it is about psychology at Seton Hall, so how to be a psych major at Seton Hall, and the second half is what you can do with the degree in psychology.
Awesome.
Undergraduate, what you do, careers, graduate school, all sorts of different options, things like that.
And I may be asking a dangerous question. What textbook does that course use?
Can I plead the fifth on that?
Yeah, of course.
We've used the Kuether textbook.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Very good. I was hoping the answer was going to be mine, but that's okay.
I'm very sorry.
No. Tara Kuether is a delightful person, and she actually has a series of textbooks. She has little ones, and then she has more combined ones. Mm-hmm. And actually, that space has filled with a lot of good people. Dana Dunn and Jane Hallinan have one, and a couple of guys at Helms and Rogers at Kennesaw State have one, and actually the original one I think was Morgan and Corsican, who are Wisconsin, so Wisconsin authors.
When I first developed the course, that was the course that my colleagues in Fort Wayne used, and so that's what I did. And at the beginning, there were a few options for books in that space, but that has certainly grown a lot in the time that we've been teaching it. So it's gotten a little bit harder. There are real excellent options in that space right now, and we stick with Kuether more out of inertia than anything else because it works really well, and our students seem to really like it. So that's what we've been going with. But yes, every year I see more really excellent looking books in that space, and it becomes a little bit harder for me to just keep sticking with my default instead of looking around, which is great to see. It's great to see that now this is something, if publishers are putting those resources into it and faculty are willing to write those books, there's a market for this. There's a space for it, which I really think is a fantastic shift.
And all joking aside, if you've got a book that works for you, then it works for you. And it works for your students. That's the most important thing.
Yes.
Absolutely.
But we do use the Landrum and Dillinger survey in our classes.
There you go. That's right. Yeah, that was published, 20 years ago. So absolutely. So Amy, what else? What were you thinking? Oh, he's going to ask me about this or that, or what else? What else is on your mind, top of mind these days?
My brain feels barely functional these days. I still feel like I have this lingering. COVID? Yeah, exactly. It's just this lingering. Haven't quite come out of that yet. I've forgotten how to conference. I've forgotten how to do this whole conference thing.
Meaning you didn't go to sessions and you just went to restaurants, or what?
It just feels odd.
Talk to me about
I've just kind of forgotten how to do this. I did not plan well at all. I did come up with a schedule of what I wanted to look at maybe the night before I left, and I'm normally much more of a planner than that. I pack the morning of. Again, I'm not that person. I start packing a few days before.
Okay.
I sort of jumped in the car with Marianne on Thursday morning and, okay, this is where we're going. This is what we're doing. I forgot that a good conference is exhausting because there's a lot of choices and there's a lot of things to do. Forgot about that completely. It's been getting back in the groove, and it's so delightful to see whole people in person again, as opposed to little, Zoom. Right, exactly. But it's a lot of energy.
So a couple things that you prompt me to think about. First off, anything that you forgot at home that you really need, you could go to Target and buy, right?
Well, and I had this conversation with Marianne when she came to pick me up. So we checked off a couple of things that are irreplaceable. Running clothes.
No, I'm pretty sure you can buy those.
No, I'm fussy about shoes and other things. Okay. So I could, but there'd be chafing, and nobody needs that.
Okay, thank you for sharing.
Yeah, well, you kept asking the question. Yeah. My poster, which I could pay a lot of money to have it printed after I got here.
Yeah, there's a FedEx.
I could, but since I already paid a lot of money because I sort of waited till the last minute to do it at home, I'd rather not pay a lot of money twice. And I think and credit cards. I think those were sort of the three things that I realized I absolutely had to have. And everything else can be acquired. Pittsburgh is a lovely city. They have stores. They take my money. It's all fine.
Well,
yeah.
The other thing is, and if you want to debate me on this, you can, and you'd lose. But I'm just priming the pump here. But you're far enough along in your career that you don't come to conferences to learn. You come to conferences either to teach or to network. I don't know if you'll agree with that with me publicly, and I'll edit this part out if you'd like me to. But, I mean, when you come to a conference like this, odds are you're not hearing of a lot of new ideas you'd never heard of before. You might hear someone present an idea in a way, a novel presentation of an idea, but I can't imagine there's something that you heard in the last 2 days. I'd never heard of this before. I'd be surprised if you said that.
I don't know if I'd use the phrase I've never heard of this before, but I feel like there's a lot of new ideas that I have. I went to a great talk this morning on working with undergraduate teaching assistants and actually coming up with a scale to assess their development and the skills that they're acquiring. So that's super cool. That's something that I wouldn't have thought of. And now I want to reach out to the authors of that to talk about collaborating. I went to a really cool talk on research assistants, on developing professional development kind of workshops for undergraduate research assistants. And so some workshops that these folks were developing. I really wish I could remember names and give people credit for this, but it was amazing.
Okay.
But they have all these great ideas for all these professional development workshops that they're incorporating as part of their lab meetings. And so I did not think of that. I do lab meetings all the time, but thinking about changing lab meetings to not only be, let's read the science relative to what I do, but thinking about it as, let's spend some time in lab meetings thinking more about what our students need and professional development in our students.
Yeah, but with a Google Scholar or a PsycInfo search, you could probably find very similar things.
But I would not have thought to do that.
Okay, fair enough. But
I will keep arguing with you about this.
you're welcome to. Good for you. I think you're just being polite to the people who. I mean, and I'm not putting down the conference. I'm not being critical of the conference. I just think when people get to a certain point in their careers, the functions of conferences switch. There's a flipping of the switch where people tend to become less of a learner and more of a teacher and a networker. That's all.
Okay.
All right.
I still feel like I have a lot of things. There's a lot out there, and there's a lot that I can learn. And I like to approach conferences from that perspective. I like to think about it as, what can I learn from this event? I also love to see my friends and to meet people and to network. I love to do all the things, and I do like to contribute where I can. But I really think about conferences as a great opportunity to learn new things. And maybe it's not something completely novel, but to think about something in a novel way, from a novel perspective. Or to think, maybe I did have the idea years ago was, wow, I should be doing more professional development for my undergraduate research assistants. Am I going to do that? No, because I don't have the time. But I'd love to find out that someone else has done this and I can swipe some of their materials and use it. So I do think about it from that perspective of learning things.
Okay. This is why you're so exhausted.
Maybe.
You're doing all that stuff. Absolutely. So what's coming up in your future that excites you, that you're invigorated by?
That's a great question. I am really excited to be doing this mentoring networking program in STP because I feel like this has come in a really good time in my career where of late I've been thinking about those kinds of issues. There's also a new mid-career mentoring workshop, a group working on that, which I think is super important. And I think that to me has been a noticeable shift as I think about my career, where for so long I was just focused on doing the job and, not getting fired and doing all the things to keep my job. And I still am very conscious of making sure that I am a good example of why tenure exists. I'm very conscious about folks who, and again, I'm trying not to throw shade, but I'm willing to bet all of us know somebody somewhere who got tenure and then basically stopped doing things or stopped doing things that they didn't want to do. And I'm very cognizant of trying to not to be that person and to make sure that I'm still trying new things and doing new things and continuing to get better at my job. So I think that's why I like conferences, because I get to learn these new things that I can implement later. But as part of that, we do a decent amount of mentoring in the early career space, but there's a lot less of that in the mid-career space. So we try real hard to help people get jobs. We try to help people get tenure. And then after that, we kind of say, good job. Yay. Yeah, you can't get fired now. Have a good one. But I think that it's a really important piece to think about for how many of us are in that mid-career space. And I should also say, like, prioritizing, those are the things we should be prioritizing, is getting the job and getting tenure. But I think that mid-career mentoring, and from what I've heard, the interest with the STP mid-career mentoring group has just been fantastic. Really, they've really tapped into something that really touches people. And I think it's true not only for mid-career from going, let's say, from associate to full, but also after you become a full professor. And I just got that promotion recently. And that's where I'm thinking.
Congratulations.
Thank you. That's where I'm thinking right now is, so now what do I want to do? Where do I want to go? Who do I want to be? And it makes me feel a million years old to start thinking things like, what do I want my legacy to be? What do I want to be known for when I'm done? And I would like to be deliberate about that. I would like it to be something intentional, something thoughtful. I don't have any answers. I just have ideas that I would like to do something I don't know what. But I feel like the mentoring space is a great, it aligns really well with where I am in my career right now. And so I'm really excited to kind of take that on and see where we can move that.
This notion, this very noble notion, no, I'm serious, of helping others, being a role model, that through line, is that you inherently? Is that influence of Catholicism and Catholic Church, Catholic school? Is that the intersection? Is there any? That's probably too easy an explanation.
Well, I would not say that I'm any kind of Catholic anymore. So if it is, that's subconscious and unintentional. Okay. So yeah, not in any explicit way. But I value being of service. And I feel like that was a lot of being department chair. That's a good link there. So I think that, to me, that's sort of the connection. And I feel like I can do that in a lot of ways. Right. But maybe this mentoring piece and facilitating mentoring is similar in that way.
Amy, thank you so much.
Thank you. This was delightful.
I want to end on that, if you're okay. Unless
Absolutely.
you have something else.
Quite all right.
That is a good, positive note to think about service to others and how we can mentor and support other people. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.